Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim so that he could not see. He called his elder son, Esau, and said to him, "My son?" And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "See, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. Then prepare for me savory food such as I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may bless you before I die."
Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me game and prepare for me savory food to eat, that I may bless you before the Lord before I die.' Now therefore, my son, obey my word as I command you. Go to the flock and get me 2 choice kids, so that I may prepare from them savory food for your father, such as he likes, and you shall take it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." But Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, "Look, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a man with smooth skin. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him, and bring a curse on myself, and not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my word and go. Get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared savory food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. And she put the skins of the kids on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she handed the savory food and the bread that she had prepared to her son Jacob.
So he went in to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, so that you may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord, your God, granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went up to his father Isaac, who felt him, and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy, like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He answered, "I am." And then he said, "Bring it to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him, and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven, and of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of his father Isaac, his brother Esau came in from his hunting. He also prepared savory food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father sit up and eat of his son's game, so that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I am your firstborn son, Esau." Then Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came? And I have blessed him? Yes, and blessed he shall be." When Esau heard his father's words, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, me also, father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and look, now he has taken away my blessing." And then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "I have already made him your lord, and I have given him all his brothers as servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Have you only one blessing, father? Bless me also, father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then his father Isaac answered him, "See, away from the fatness of the earth shall your home be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you break loose, you shall break his yoke from your neck."
Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." But the words of her elder son Esau were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger against you turns away, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you back from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day?"
Thea, in Genesis 27, we have a story of Rebecca, and that's one of several stories in Genesis that really highlight the role of the wives of the patriarchs, we call them matriarchs. Help us understand why are they just wives, or why are they important in the story of Genesis?
Pete, that's an excellent question. We want to move our focus from the idea that these women are simply wives to see their active role and proactive role as mothers of the covenant people. Rebecca, in particular, is very dynamic as a character. She is very often on the go. The verb to go is used 7 times in reference to Rebecca. She travels, she goes out to meet people, she administers her household in a very active and effective way. And she also makes a particular choice between her children. She loves Jacob, and she works to ensure that Jacob receives the blessing that God has ordained for him.
And how about moving back to Sarah, who's sort of like the matriarch of the matriarchs? I mean, how is she important in the flow of the story of Genesis?
Sarah is very important. She sometimes may take a back seat to Rebecca. She's not as exciting as a character in some ways. But God promises to her several times that you will be the mother of nations. And the promise that she will bear this son Isaac, who will be the recipient of the covenant blessing and who will carry on Abraham's line. This promise is repeated 4 times in the Genesis story.
Does she have a more of a passive role compared to Rebecca, perhaps, or?
In some ways, perhaps a good illustration of that might be when at Mamre, when God visits Abraham to make the announcement that in a year's time Sarah will bear this child. Sarah's been preparing the food. It's really not a passive role at all. Abraham says we need to take care of our guests. Quick, get the flour, start making the bread. And she's very busy in the tent preparing the food for the meal. The visitor, this divine visitor, asks a very important question. Where is Sarah?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And this is a clue to us that she has to be present in this story for the story to go on, for Israel's story to go on.
She's a part of it. She's not just sort of ancillary, but she's in some way integral to the promise.
Essential.
Which makes the story of Genesis go, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about Rachel?
Rachel has an interesting place in the Jewish and Christian tradition. Rachel is the beloved and favored wife of Jacob. She's a shepherd. So we see, again, she has a very active role. She goes out into the public sphere, and she also, as a shepherd, models God's own shepherding care. She bears 2 children. Joseph is her older son, and Benjamin is her younger son. She dies giving birth to Benjamin. In that story, we get a glimpse into the kind of risk that the mothers of Israel took on themselves in bearing children. We tend to think of pregnancy and childbirth as relatively safe. Modern medicine has done a lot for women. The process is when you give birth, you're usually anesthetized in our culture. In the ancient world, it was very dangerous. The average life expectancy for males in ancient Israel, from archaeological evidence we've learned, is probably about 40.
Wow.
For women, it's 30, because during those childbearing years, women were very likely to die in childbirth. We also see that there's a very high infant mortality rate, and the work of women in nurturing and feeding and clothing and sustaining children is very hard work in the face of disease and problems of famine. The women are the ones who make sure that the children are cared for, that they're healthy. And so the women are the ones who really carry on that line.
Well, Thea, the covenant is certainly one of the central, if not the central issue in the book of Genesis. how do the matriarchs in the book of Genesis mediate that covenant? How do they make it happen? How do they carry it forward?
Well, a crucial piece of that covenant is the promise of descendants, the promise of seed. And the matriarchs really are a key part of that for obvious reasons. First of all, because without a mother, you can't have a child. And throughout the stories of the matriarchs and the patriarchs, you have the concern for will there be an heir to the promise? And who will be the heir to the promise? For Sarah, it's a question of she's entered into her old age, she's barren. Will she be able to have a child? And frankly, she is very courageous in accepting the gift that God gives her to bear a child at her age. For Rebecca, the problem is that she has twin sons. And who will be the heir to that promise? And Rebecca goes to seek an oracle from the Lord. The language is she goes to inquire of the Lord. This is technical language in the Old Testament for going to receive a word from God. And God gives her an oracle about the future of her two children. And with that information, she knows whom she must choose and whom she must help to receive the blessing.
And that's information given to her, not to her husband.
Only to her.
To her, right.
That's right. And directly to her. And in the story of Genesis 27, that's what we see. Rebecca intervening at just the right moment to make sure that when Isaac gives his blessing, he gives it to Jacob, because Jacob will become Israel. Jacob will become the father of the covenant people.
Thea, the story of the patriarchs and matriarchs in Genesis is more than just about them. It's ultimately, I guess, about God and who He is. So what picture of God emerges for us? What can we understand about God from looking at this relationship of the role that the matriarchs play in Genesis?
Well, it shows us a God who acts to sustain the life of God's covenant people. We see the actions of Rebecca, for example, in feeding and clothing and intervening for the welfare of her child and to ensure that promise. And in the ways that she and the other covenant mothers perform this sustaining activity, they mirror God's own nurturing and sustaining actions. And that tells us something about God.